Good afternoon, friends. David Wright here, and I'm your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast. And I'm really excited today to be joined by Prith Banerjee. Prith, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Great to meet you, David. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Prith Banerjee. I'm Chief Technology Officer of
Yes, and I know you've had quite an exciting career that I'm really excited to dive into. It's an honor to have you on. Um, before anything though, we like to start the episode with just one piece of actionable advice you might look to leave the listeners with today.
Yeah, so the actual advice is, I'm going to talk about disruptive innovation. And what I would like you to understand is that innovation happens in different forms. I will talk about some innovations in products, innovations in solutions, and so on. And when people talk about disruptive innovation, they oftentimes think that as an individual, either responsible for driving the innovation or managing innovation, you have to do it yourself. And one thing I've learned is it's okay to partner, to reach out to someone else and practice what I call open innovation. This is a concept I will go into a little more detail. The world doesn't care where the innovation comes from, as long as part of bringing it to maturity, right? So don't get stuck with this not invented here. Oh, I didn't invent that disruptive innovation. Therefore, I have no contribution. Even if you can find, if you can identify that disruptive innovation somewhere from a startup, from an academia, whatever, right? And bring it in the hands of customers, you have done society a big, big contribution. So don't think that disruptive innovation has to be done only by yourself. It is absolutely okay to lean on, partner with others, and bring that disruptive innovation to.
It's funny, Prith, because I know that you talked about this years ago now, but just recently we see the advent of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and the impact that generative AI is now having on, you name it, across the software stack, cross industries. I mean, it completely embodies that, right? Because 9 out of 10 of them are using GPT, right? So anyway, we'll get more into it, but great advice for technologists and CIOs alike, I'd say. Prith, let's talk a little bit about your backstory. So kind of where you started out and how you got to the point that you're at in your career today.
Sure. So I am originally from India. I did my undergraduate at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, one of the five top IITs in India. And I came to the US to pursue my PhD, which I got from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in electrical engineering, which is a top five school in the field. And after graduation, I started my career in academia as a professor at the University of Illinois. I spent a dozen years as a professor at the University of Illinois. Then I went to Northwestern University, was a department head, and I was a dean of engineering at the University of Illinois, Chicago. So hardcore academia for more than 20 years, doing what professors do, supervise. I had more than 35 PhD students, wrote lots of publications, lots of patents, trying to invent, do research on interesting things. And my research area was parallel algorithms for electronic design. And after that, I came to a realization that all the wonderful publications at more than 650 papers were not actually resulting in actual products people use. So I went through this aha moment. Hey, why am I doing all this stuff? I'm an innovator, but none of the innovations are actually showing up. And so then I took leave from the academic setting and was involved with two very small software startups that I founded. And one was Excel Chip, the second was Bang. These were all technologies coming from the labs, one from University of Illinois, the second one from Northwestern University. But As part of it, I learned how to take those research ideas from an academic lab and actually build a product that customers would use. And the funny thing, David, is the kick I got out of the first customer writing a check for $50,000 for a copy of Excel sheet was much better than those 250 publications that I published, right? I mean, not to say that publications are not important, but but when you see that this innovation that you have created in an academic lab, somebody's actually using it, somebody sees a value, pay for it, right, to use it rather than just giving it for free, was enormous. I did those two startups, and that literally transformed my life and my approach to innovation. And then that got me into the third phase of my career, where in the last 15 years, I've been managing large R&D organizations. The first company was I was head of HP Labs worldwide, which I did for about 5 years, ran HP's central research arm. And then I became this group CTO, Chief Technology Officer for ABB, a power and automation company in Zurich, in Switzerland. Then I was CTO at Schneider Electric, a power and automation company in France. And for the last 6 years, I've been CTO at Ansys, which is a large modeling and simulation company. So where my story is, I've always been interested in innovation. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and I've tried to drive innovation using my engineering knowledge, first in academia, then in startups, and then in large companies. And I find myself incredibly fortunate to have had experiences in three different forms of innovation.
Yeah, no, so many different facets to innovation across those different types of organizations. And I liked how you started the episode talking about how, there's different types of innovation or, I mean, in my experience, in order to achieve innovation at or within an enterprise organization versus, a small startup, I mean, it's just the elements, the levers that you often have to pull or the things that you need to go through culturally or otherwise, it's dynamic. So it's incredible that you've had that experience. I mean, what would you say is one of the most important things that you learned over the course of your journey at any one of those stages? And if you could think kind of like what was your life before learning it and after learning it, I'd be interested to hear.
You should start with a customer problem that you're trying to solve, right? And as a startup entrepreneur, right? When I started Excel Chip or Banerjee, right? I mean, you'd think, well, just because it is new, it is interesting, and you should kind of put all your energy into solving the problem. I mean, it always starts with customer having a pain. And can you solve that pain with that innovative solution, either a product or a solution or an idea, right? And that is where the whole thing gets started. And then, of course, you have to see, does an innovative a solution already exist or not? And if it is just only one person in the plant would be interested in that, then it's clearly not an interesting solution, right? So, and that gets to the size of the market and the total available market and so on, right? But some advice that I've given to entrepreneurs oftentimes is when you're trying to be a disruptive innovator as a startup, right? And hey, how large is my market? Oftentimes, we try to do the traditional way of sizing up the market, total available market. The market may actually be zero. But then you have to create the market. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that, because it can say, well, why would anybody want to do a thing with a market of zero? So imagine that you invented a device such that blind men can see. Now, David, you wear glasses, I wear glasses, right? But we can see. But suppose you could invent a glass that blind men can see. And you are the startup entrepreneur. And then you say, hey, I'm going to pitch it to a VC to get funding. So what's the market for device such as blind men can see? So you type it into Google, what's the market for blind men can see? Or type it into Chat GPT, and the answer will be zero. because there is no market, right? Nobody has invented the device. And so you would think that, oh, the market is zero, therefore I should not do it, right? But an entrepreneur would say, hey, let me try to size the market if I could invent such a device, right? And so you'd say, how many people are on the planet? 9 billion. How many people are blind? I don't know, maybe 100,000, right? So the market is 100,000 people. How much would they be willing to pay? $1, $2? Well, you and I pay $200 for a device such that a person who is not blind can see better. So that's the bottom line. So at least I'll pay $200 for something I already can see, but I can see better. So somebody who is blind will pay more for it, right? So therefore, maybe $300. So 300 times 100,000. That's how you come up with the market, right? So essentially, the point is that you have to identify the problem and you have to identify whether it is a repeatable solution or just a one-trick pony, right? And that's how you try to solve this problem. And oftentimes people say, oh, the size of a market for this is all consumer device, right? It's like $1 trillion, right? It doesn't help you, right? Because your consumer device is in your area, such that blind men. It's not just glasses, it's like glasses of particular type. So try to be as specific as you can, but don't limit it to glasses such as blind men in Africa who are left-handed, whatever, right? I mean, you see my point, right? Try to be as broad, but also try to sell an interesting problem. And if you do this, that is solving 90% of it, right? Oftentimes people struggle with innovation with this product market misfit, right? They think they have a product, there's no market, or they have a market, they don't have the right product, right? That product market fit is the most important thing for an innovator and a disruptive innovator. And again, but I'm sure your audience always knows it, but that's something I've found out over many years.
No, I mean, I think it's really important uh, for entrepreneurs in particular to hear, because so often as a founder, I can end up getting myopic with something I think is really, really great that people will really, really love without actually, like you said, kind of suggested, going to the customer and making sure it's something the customer actually wants. And a number of years ago, we decided, the healthcare customers were reaching out to us. We saw this opportunity in CX and healthcare. We decided to just go full bore. And sure enough, the customers kept driving the way that we scaled our business. So we were consistently like a little ahead of our skis, and we just kept going like that. And it was the best thing that ever could have happened, but we were truly letting the customer drive. And similar kind of addressable market wise. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly.
The other insight I wanted to provide to you, and I need you to wrap up, is, I mean, you need resources, you need funding, right? Either it's an idea that, okay, I'm going to invent this device such as bandwidth can see, right? And it will cost some time to do the research and R&D. I need this kind of material, this kind of stuff. I had to put it together, and it will cost, I don't know, $1 million to build, right? So where do you get the cash? Well, if you're filthy rich, you can do it yourself, or you have to ask people for money. And so the question is, so there are people in the world who have money, who are either angel investors or friends or whatever. Somebody who has the money doesn't have the idea. And you are the person with the money, with the idea. And oftentimes you'll be able to say, oh my God, it's my idea. And I need to have everything, right? I need to have the entire ownership of it, right? And why should I give my ownership off to an investor, right? All he is paying is money, but you need the money. Without the money, you won't go anywhere, right? And so oftentimes entrepreneurs say, oh, I pitched this business plan, right? And my VC only validated at, I don't know, 2 million, and they're giving $1 million, so they're taking 1/3 ownership of the company. And, oh my God, this is not fair. But without that 1 million, your idea would go nowhere, right? So you actually think of it as a partnership. Everybody brings something to the table. And you are an entrepreneur. I said, oh, I'm going to do it all myself, right? You need a team. You need a salesperson. who will sell your product. You need somebody who will actually build the product. Somebody. So don't try to do everything yourself. Surround yourself with people who have complementary skill and give them all a part of your business. Don't try to keep everything yourself, in which case, if you try to own 99% of the founder shares and you give nothing to others, right? Those other people will not be motivated to make this successful, right? So share in the wins with your investor, with other people, and then everybody becomes successful. And these are sort of things I have learned over the years, that don't try to be greedy in your first round.
Prith, no, I mean, I agree 100%. Great insights. Last question I'd have kind of about your background and your history would be, is there a time that either you had a project fail or you had a personal hardship, something that occurred over the course of those kind of three stages of your trajectory as an executive, but ultimately it was a pivotal time where you took away kind of a profound lesson from that instance?
Actually, mentioned one. When I started my first company, Excel Chip, and the year was 2000, 1999, 2000. Around that time, everybody was doing a dot-com startup. So money was easy to find, right? And so I was a professor at Northwestern University. I thought, well, I would start this company called Excel Chip, and I wrote up a business plan. And very soon I found a VC who was willing to put in $2 million at the pre-money valuation that I wanted. I said I wanted the pre-money of 6 million, meaning that these investors would give 2 million to own 25% of the company. And so that's such a good thing. And I felt as a first time entrepreneur, this business plan writing thing is so easy. And I will just keep starting companies every month, right? So the investor said, "Prith, you have a great idea. You should not wait for the money to come in. Just start making the plans, buy the equipment, rent your space." So I went in and I spent like almost $300,000 of money, my personal money, in anticipation of the funding is about to come, because I did not want to slow down the process. I hired a bunch of employees and I got the office. I had all this kind of stuff and so on. And we were supposed to close the day after Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving. And on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the VC calls and says, "Sorry, I did not fund the company." And I was like $300,000 in the hole. And I wasn't, but not a rich man. I was an academic. Academics don't make a lot of money. So this was like, oh my God, it was the worst Thanksgiving. And I said, "Oh, you must be kidding." I said, "No, that's what happened." So from that point, when I could have literally said, "Oh gosh, this is it. What is it going to do? I'm just declared personal bankruptcy and gone back to India." Instead, I got such a kick in the pants. I said, "I am going to make it successful." And so fast forward, took me 4 or 5 more months to get real customers and real VCs and so on. And the process was, had this VC actually funded the company, I would have built the wrong product, because I would have built the product based on my learning in academia. I would have built a completely wrong product, because I was just going to take his money and build that product like such a blind man can see, without actually testing on blind men, right? Because it was the money, right? Now that I had to work so hard for that money to get, and I got myself a mortgage for the home, etc., to take care of the short-term stuff. Right? I could have gone through total disaster, but because I got such a kick in the back, I had to build something that customer and test it with customers. And then the customer had to say, "Sure, I'll pay you $100,000 for this." And so beta customers and so on. And then I got the right VC to fund the company, and the company was successful. And I was able to sell the company for $25 million to a large company. Right? So my point is that here is a potential point where I could have just declared failure and say, "Oh my God, this is just, let me just go back to academia." Or taking this thing, "You know what, I believe in this, I'm going to make it happen." even though it is a short-term disappointment, it actually became a much longer-term success. So that's something to share with your audience, that there are times that will come in your life which looks like, oh gosh, this is a total disaster. But there's always a light in the tunnel, and you have to, and it will not come to you. You have to work hard.
I totally get that. And there's two things I take away from that. I mean, there's a lot that but personally, I remember years ago when we were first starting our healthcare practice, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, we had our biggest client, and we front loaded a lot of the effort by way of this kind of deal that we struck, and we were a little vulnerable at the time because we were young, and we got the look because the CEO was an old friend of mine. We normally wouldn't have gotten a look with someone this big, and we went through the process. Long story short, we got kind of screwed at the 11th hour out of millions and millions of dollars that we had been, earmarking basically. And there was no recourse really. And in the moment, it was heart-wrenching. Looking back on it, it just it gave me some perspective about life, and at the moment I had some family stuff going on, and just the fact that, like, yes, business is important, and creating something, having an impact is important to me, but like my family is everything, right? And because otherwise, why am I doing all this if not for them? And so that was an important kind of learning I had. And then ultimately, the work that we did with them became the basis for what was to come. And it was almost like we got to learn on their dime, and the name of that client, plus the work we did, plus some references of the folks that didn't screw us over, became what catapulted us into everything else. And we saw exponential growth from there. So if I would have gave up at that point, I would have never seen that. And the other thing I'll just mention is we've had a number of folks that have looked to either buy, not disruptive innovators, but disruptive innovations over the years, or invest in disruptive innovations. And I've always bootstrapped things. I still own 100% of the company. And one of the reasons for that is because I have fell on my face more than once over the last, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been. And it was almost like I wanted to, or I needed to, or I thought it was important to work out all of those kinks before I was pouring the gasoline on the fire. And now at this point, now we're looking at, okay, do we want to look at PE? Do we want to look at VC? Do we want to look at some other type of investment opportunity? Because now the timing's right, and I see exactly what I would use it for. All of that's lining up, but it's just great advice. I mean, really, certainly resonates with me. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know, Prith, that you actually this all experience all culminated in a book that you wrote not so long ago. Typically, I ask a question at this juncture about actually your favorite book that you're reading now, or your favorite book all time. I would love to spend a few minutes to learn, or share with the audience a little bit more about the Innovation Factory, and before we get into some of the work that you're doing at Ansys.
Absolutely. So let me first answer the question, what book am I reading? I'm actually reading a book called The Current Wars. It is about alternating current and direct current, right? And there's a movie that came out on current wars, and there's a fantastic book called The Empires of Light, which I highly recommend. It's not fiction. It is a real life story, but it's the thing that happened between Thomas Edison, who had invented DC current, and Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse that invented AC, and the fight between AC and DC. And it's a phenomenal book because it talks about the core of various things on innovation. So highly recommend. Let me talk about the book that I wrote. I wrote a book called Innovation Factory, which is what I'm showing here. And I wrote this last year. The key idea of this book is that large companies. I mean, I have, as I mentioned, I've worked at Hewlett Packard, I've worked at ABB, at Schneider Electric, now I work at Ansys. But you look at the thousands of large companies that are around the world, right? IBM or GE or Boeing and so on, right? All these companies, they do a great job in what I call the incremental innovation or what I call horizon one innovation, right? So I used to work at HP, and HP has laptops and servers and printers, right? And when they wanted to come up with the next version of the laser printer, they nailed it. They knew exactly they need to make it sort of 10% more faster or better color or whatever. And the processor, the laptop has to be faster, cheaper, lower power. So they nailed it, right? So the Horizon One, all large companies do a great job because they have the product, they have the R&D, and they're selling their product through their sales channel. The salespeople are seeing what is going on, what customer feedback is happening, what is competition doing. I'm working at HP. What is Dell doing? Oh, I should do that for the next laptop, right? So Horizon One innovation is something that all large companies do well. Horizon Two is what I call the adjacency, right? The midterm. And so think of I worked for ABV. We used to make transformers. So you make a transformer in 110 volts in the US, and you try to go with transformer in India, which is 220 volts, 50 hertz frequency, right? So slightly different product, right? But it's basically the same. It is a transformer, but for a not. And again, that all companies do well. I have a robot here, and I want to do a robot here. I'm in on premise, so I work for an. We have all kinds of software that runs on premise on your workstation, and I want to go to the cloud. That's an idea. That also Horizon Two people do well. What most companies struggle with is the long-term disruptive Horizon 3 innovation. And it is what when Apple came up with the iPhone, that was disruptive innovation. When Amazon, the book company, right, came up with AWS, the Amazon Web Services, that's what disruptive. It is very hard for large companies to do disruptive innovation within. Typically, disruptive innovation happen from startups, right? So the bookstore was Barnes and Noble, right? And Amazon was the startup, and they come up with a disruptive way to do retail for books, right? So typically, disruptions always happen from startup. Large companies never do disruptive innovation. So my book is about how large companies can not accidentally, but by a process, do disruptive innovation. And this is something that has been, as I said, I worked in academia. I've worked so in academia, they do a great job in inventing new stuff, right? Discovering new stuff, but they don't know how to make it into product. Startups do a great job in doing disruptive innovation, but they don't know how to scale. So how can large companies do disruptive innovation? By embracing, by partnering with academia, partnering with startups. It's a concept called open innovation. And this is where I started my podcast saying, don't think you have to do everything yourself. Your thing is you have to bring that idea to your customers, that disruptive innovation. And it can be your own invention, or it can be a partner's invention that you partner to market. And that is essentially what I talk about in my book. And it's something that I've practiced in my job at HP Labs. I had an open innovation program at HP Labs. When I was a Schneider Electric, I did that at ABB. And now I'm actually practicing what I discussed and in the Innovation Factory. Hopefully, this will be of some interest to your readers.
It's such a brilliant idea, and you see some companies do this better than others. I think Salesforce does a fairly good job of this. Epic actually now recently built their workshop program, Epic Systems, the EHR, where they bring these innovative players, ambient listening, cloud contact center, to the table, right? And the idea is that they're going to get with the customers, the mutual customers of those entities, and back into the use cases that are going to have the biggest impact on their customers together, collaborating with those new technologies, right? And I think there's some. I mean, it's a brilliant idea.
And I'll just let me kind of expand on it, right? So I give the example of Apple iPhone, right? But look at, so once they had the iPhone, they also had this concept of this iOS and the app, right? And all those apps that are on the iPhone, essentially Apple gets, I don't know, maybe 20, 25% royalties of all the apps, right? So you say, hey, this is not fair. But look, if I am a startup, right, I would have nowhere to go. But now this iOS is providing a platform, right? So it's absolutely okay for me to do that, right? But the other point is, look at iTunes, right? There were all these, I mean, movies and musics and so on and so forth, right? Which we had all the record now available. Now it's all available on iTunes. So look at, again, I know your listeners are all aware of Apple, but let me give you a more recent example. NVIDIA. NVIDIA was a company that used to make GPUs, graphics processing unit. For what application? For gaming applications. So you are trying, you and I are seeing this thing right on the screen, and it's a bunch of pixels on the screen, and it's red, black, green, and so on. And what the GPUs do is they do rasterization so that you can see this very, very bright and clear. But the market for GPUs was only restricted to gaming or laptops and so on. Jensen had this vision that these same GPUs can be used potentially for these AI applications, right? And nobody, and he was giving talks at, at GTC on ResNet and image, and nobody listened. And he kept on doing this, right? And he created this whole open ecosystem called CUDA to create these things, and all the professors and graduate students and working on this and so on and so forth. And through this, Chat GPT happened, right, with OpenAI. And once ChatGPT happened, you have seen what has happened, and that the market for Nvidia went through the roof, right? That's an example. They didn't buy any company, right? They just invested. They were making GPUs for graphics, and they pivoted their thing right to this AI area and created this entire large open ecosystem called CUDA, and everybody wrote their stuff on the NVIDIA GPUs, not on AMD GPUs, not on Intel GPUs. That is disruptive innovation.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Cause when I started building computers as a kid, I was using NVIDIA graphics cards at the time. That's all they were doing, like you said. And now, I mean, you see what they did with OpenAI, and also like St. Jude has a bunch of predictive analytics use cases with their AI, and yeah, it's just amazing. I'm glad I invested in their stock a number of years back. So I digress. So super cool. I'm really excited to talk a little bit more, Prith, now about your current role. So you're the CTO at Ansys. With the few minutes we have left, let's talk a little bit about your vision for the organization, maybe some of the key initiatives that you're working on. Just interested in learning more about what you guys are up to.
Sure. So Ansys is a modeling and simulation company, and we help our customers build the most amazing product. So we help in 5 different industries: in the automotive industry, aerospace, energy, high tech, and healthcare. I know that you are interested in healthcare, so I'll get there, right? So let's say you are in the automotive industry, you want to build a car. Chances are that whatever car company you're working with are using Ansys for modeling and simulating that car and that crash of the car, right? Yeah. I don't know if you have seen crash uh, videos of dummies inside a car, and they bang the car to make sure that the dummies are safe, right? So all those things are done with Ansys simulation. Or I don't know, David, when the last time you took a flight, if you're an airplane, sort of Boeing or Airbus, or you've heard of these fighter jets, the Lockheed Martin, so the General Dynamics, right? F-22 aircraft or whatever, right? Chances are that those planes are built using Ansys simulation. If you go to the energy industry, right, all the wind farms and the solar and whatever farms and so on, nuclear power plants, all simulated by Ansys simulation. In the high-tech industry, all the chips, the Intel, the NVIDIA, the AMD chips, all the cloud providers, Amazon, Microsoft, whatever, right? All of them use Ansys simulation to design their products. So finally, in healthcare, the area that I think you are very, very interested in, uh, your Medtronic, you're making a pacemaker to help save lives, right? For to save arrhythmia. That pacemaker is probably designed with Ansys simulation. So we help our customers design and simulate products completely in the virtual world, right? So in the past, when you say, "Hey, I want to design this bottle," right? I would come up with, oh, the bottle has to have water, right? So I'll design the bottle. I'll mock up a, a prototype of this bottle and then put water in the bottle. And then I try to push it and see where it breaks and so on. And that's called hardware prototype based innovation, right? The trouble with hardware prototyping is it takes a lot of time and energy and cost. And imagine you are building an airplane, right? You are building that wing of that airplane. And you say, will that wing provide the lift so the plane will fly or not? And you design that wing of that airplane, put it in a wind tunnel. That's how Boeing and NASA used to do these things. Wind tunnels, which are massive, large things, right? With 600 miles per hour, and you put a little a clay model of a wing, and you measure, does it give the lift or not? It took $10 million for one wind test, right? Pretty expensive. Now you can do it through Ansys simulation called virtual wind tunnel. You don't need to do that. Right? Or that crash that I talked about, right? Every time we bang up a car, it's $1 million gone, right? So obviously you cannot do 100 different designs. You cannot do 100 car crashes. You cannot do 100 different airplane wings and do wind tunnel tests. So it's very, very expensive. So what Ansys does is we look at the world around us, which is governed by the laws of physics. It's called Navier-Stokes equations for fluids, called Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic, it's called Euler equations for mechanical. And you solve those partial differential equations numerically, accurately. And so if we say this plane is going to fly, it will fly. If we say this car crash is not going to kill the dummy, it will not kill the dummy. That's what Ansys does. And again, as I said, we have more than 14,000 customers in the 5 verticals. So now the question of as CTO at Ansys, what is my role, right? My role is to look beyond the current products that we have. We have a product for fluid simulation called Fluid. We have a product for mechanical structural simulation called Ansys Mechanical. We have a product for electromagnetic simulation called HFSS. And these simulators run on premise on a workstation, right? And they do a good job. My role as CTO is to look beyond and say, what are the technologies that will completely disrupt the world of simulation? For example, world of AI, right? So again, we talked about ChatGPT as well. We are looking at how AI is going to transform the world of simulation. Something that can take 1,000 hours to run, can run it in a matter of minutes. Or doing high performance computing using GPUs or quantum computing. We're looking at all kinds of these new exciting technologies to speed things up. Or looking at the cloud, right? People talk about AWS cloud and Amazon cloud and Microsoft cloud and so on. So we are taking our solvers, making them run on the cloud, and then creating platforms on top of it to build apps like iOS apps and Android apps. We are looking at digital engineering. We're looking at things like for specifying I want to build an electric vehicle with a range of 1,000 miles and 0 to 60 in 1 second. That is my specification. Can I take that specification, automatically generate an EV car, the next Tesla? So in my role as a CTO, I'm looking at all those kinds of disruptive innovations, and I am having fun. And as part of it, I work with lots of universities, work with lots of startups. So I'm practicing what I preach.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. It seems like such a good fit for your experience too. Though no surprise there. Couple last questions, Prith. One would be, what are some of the biggest challenges you guys are facing today, just as an organization in general?
So as an organization, what we are facing is that we sell our simulation solvers, right? But our customers need to be what are called simulation analysts. There's sort of very few. If your organization has be 100 engineers, only 5% of people are knowledgeable to use our Ansys stimulation, right? So really take advantage of it. It's only a very small number because our solvers, even though they are very accurate, they are fast, they're robust, they're not that easy to use. You almost need to have a PhD in electrical engineering, right, to use our electromagnetic solver, HFSS, or a PhD in aerospace engineering by MIT to use Fluent, right, in the best possible way. So the challenge we are facing as an organization is how do you democratize simulation so that anybody can use it, right? So you talked about being a doctor in healthcare area, right? Imagine a nurse sitting and looking at a patient. And if that nurse, instead of just doing the ECG testing and so on, right? You could provide a model of a human heart, right? And the interaction with that tool is so easy, almost like putting a stethoscope, right? Except that instead of you are doing a what if analysis through simulation. So we are building virtual human model, like the digital twins of human, the human heart, the human brain, the human whatever, right? And essentially democratizing it. So a nurse who doesn't have any engineering background will be able to use it, just like people, high school girls use iPhone apps, right? They just go in there and they're going on Instagram and they're doing interesting things and they're creating fantastic videos and so on. It is something, these things used to require engineers to do those things. Now, a 10-year-old girl can do it. Our challenge is how can we make simulation easy to use, democratize so all 10 billion people on the world can use it to build interesting products in their own lives.
Wow. Super interesting. I mean, I think that's the future of that whole industry too, as I see it. So you kind of answered that question in my mind as well. But this has been fantastic. We're pretty much out of time here. But I learned so much personally, so I could only imagine what our audience took away. With my last question, I always just like to ask my guests, if you could go back 5, 10, 15 years in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
I don't think I would have changed anything. I mean, one thing is I feel fortunate that blundered my way through the world of academia and startups and large companies. I would not have, having ended up in the large company, I would not have said, hey, I should have started working in a large company in day one. I would not also say, I wish I would have stayed back in academia and retired in academia. So I think the experience I've got with these broad, literally three totally different kinds of organizations has actually made me a better human being. And you kind of talked about families. All my learnings at work actually bring to my personal life. I have a son who is a graduate from Berkeley, and he and his wife, they have both started a healthcare company in San Francisco, and I give free advice. They don't listen. They give free advice to them as to, I mean, look, they face challenges in their own career, and as they're taking their startup center in health, which is actually in the healthcare area, to the next level. And I keep telling them there will be challenges. I have faced challenges in my life, but this is the beauty and the challenge of being an entrepreneur.
Prith, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all next week.